woman involved.
What do you think of the new look, Bella? Notice some new things on there?
I like the new sponsors, guys. And now I need to try
Oh.
homegrown relief. That's the one thing. I gotta try it.
Do you do CBD?
Oh yeah.
Oh, of course you do. Especially
Of
being in
course.
Southern California now.
Oh yeah. They've got, the real special kinds of CBD out here for sure.
You're integrating into the culture seamlessly. You got a surf suit. You went out and hit the waves yesterday, I believe.
Oh yeah, I am really embracing the Cali life. The best way I can describe it is San Diego is Barbie Land mixed with Tony Hawk's American Skate Land, and it's the perfect blend. It's great.
Mm.
All right, we got a full house today, and we got a lot to talk about. This is obviously Wodapalooza week, and so we're going to have elite individual focus today, elite team focus tomorrow. I would say that, maybe even on par with the games or ahead of it in terms of the elite plus the team competition. This is pretty much as good as you're going to get anywhere in the sport of CrossFit. We saw introduction of the teams of 3 last year in Miami with massive participation from some of the best in the world, and we have the same again this year with stacked lineups in all 4 divisions. So we're going to do men and women elite today for individuals, men and women elite teams tomorrow. Will be later in the day because both Bella and I are traveling to Miami tomorrow, but we'll be back for that. Before we get into the
correction,
what?
Brian, it was not the introduction of teams of 3 last year. It was the
reintroduction.
There we go. Gotcha.
The reintroduction, yes.
Keeping you honest. Keeping you honest.
It was actually it's great to say that Wodapalooza has had teams of 3 forever, and we're actually going to talk about that tomorrow. Yep. During the sanctional years, they made an amendment to the way that they run the team divisions to accommodate the teams of 4 in the qualifying position. So thank you, Patrick.
It was an introduction into the new format, though. I think that's
correct with the teams and the individuals and the opportunity to compete in both at Wodapalooza in the same week, which we have once again.
Yeah.
So before we get into TYR Wodapalooza 2024, we want to introduce you guys to some new sponsors that we have. And since we've already mentioned Wodapalooza, Strike Movement has partnered with us for this entire week. So all the coverage from podcasts to articles to Instagram posts and highlight reels that the B.Friendly fitness team will be providing is going to be in partnership and collaboration with Strike Movement. We got some new opportunities and exciting information with them that you guys will be able to see throughout the week. And we're, personally, if you guys follow along, you know that I've had a relationship with Strike Movement for a long time. The Hayes trainer is pretty much the only shoe that I wear when I have the choice. And so to have them part of our team is awesome, and we're looking forward to the content that we can provide and produce because of Strike Movement this week. But in the bigger picture, HGR CBD, who's also been a company that I've worked with a little bit, has decided to kind of partner with us on the podcast front for the at least the beginning of 2024. So we'll be supported by them with our podcasts for a while. And yeah, that's right, Barkley, Strike Movement for everything, always on the 23rd of the month. He pointed out one time to me that on 3 consecutive months on the 23rd, I happened to make a post on Instagram that said Strike Movement for everything. And
it's perfect.
Barkley and attention to detail with numbers is his expertise. So no surprises there. But HGR CBD will be a regular sponsor for our podcast for the foreseeable future, and super grateful for the partnership and relationship that we've built with them. Also, they came out to Charlotte Classic this year. They were a sponsor there. Actually, their founder, Carl Kaplan, competed in the Masters division. So we have a great relationship with them, both personally and professionally, and are both proud and happy to have the support of HGR and Strike Movement for today's episode, to kind of kick things off for this year.
Something to keep in mind with Strike Movement is they are known for the company not to have codes. I mean, Brian gets it all the time. People ask me all the time. I know Kiefer, who's a big Strike Movement guy, he gets asked all the time. So, can we get a code? Can we get a code? Well, this week, keep an eye out on our Instagram channel. They will be doing codes. So something they normally don't do. So just just pay attention. You'll see some cool stuff coming up from Strike Movement in partner with us and Wodapalooza. And as for HGR, I can't say enough about them. Obviously, Brian, you're really you're really wrapped up into them. I mean, you use their product religiously. I cannot personally, but my dogs can. So, but we got a bunch of other cool stuff. We'll talk about HGR and some of the other products that in the future here. I'm sure you'll hear enough of them, but we're obviously excited to have them on there. So, but this is in regards probably to the strike movement comment. So
I'm sure it is, because he's actually asked me recently if I had a code. What's up, Alan? And then obviously you got Patrick and Bella and I have been doing a bunch of episodes regularly over the past few weeks, and we got Chad joining us today. If you guys don't know Chad Mueller by his face, you probably know him by his work. He's done a massive amount of design work throughout the CrossFit space for the last couple of years, and he is an integral part of B.Friendly Fitness team. He is the reason that Patrick and I were able to launch this thing in May 1st of 2023. He'll be down in Miami with us this year, and he loves meeting new people, and whether they're business, friends, athletes, whatever. So if you see him, say hi. He's going to also be with me and Bella tomorrow for the team show, because Patrick will be traveling when we're doing that. So we're going to bounce some ideas off of him in terms of athletes to watch and get his perspectives throughout the show, but also just wanted you guys to have a chance to get to know his face and appreciate the part that he plays to our team.
Oh,
there you go.
On the hot seat.
Say something, Chad.
Hello from Canada.
There we go.
All the secrets out.
Yeah, I know. Oops.
So this morning posted 2 articles on the B.Friendly Fitness website, one for the men, one for the women, and then, as a couple of you had noticed and pointed out, we made one post on Instagram that had the predictions or rankings for both of the divisions simultaneously. And we were kind of trying that out this week just because there is so much to talk about, and the run up to Wodapalooza happens pretty quickly. And so I'll kind of let Patrick lead the way in terms of how he navigates, or whether we go men, women, and the topics that we talk about. But we have seen all the comments you guys have been making already, and we're going to try to get to all of that throughout the show today.
Let's thanks a lot, Brian. We'll start with the men, and then we'll address some of the other comments. I'm seeing some stuff here from Sarah. We'll get to your comment regarding DB and some other things. Obviously, if people know anything about Wodapalooza, it's a great event. Obviously, if you ever had the chance to go, I mean, I know being from the Midwest, hey, January in Miami, living in the Midwest, count me in. So, and I'm pretty sure Chad's probably has the same as well, being up in Canada right now or anywhere cold. But one thing about Miami Wodapalooza is they're known for the last minute changes. It happens. Athletes will either withdraw or have problems or issues traveling or something like that. I mean, I remember historically 2 years ago, there was the Smith brothers, Ben Smith, Alex Smith, and Dane. They were supposed to have a team together, and the team leading literally the day of ended up being Sam Dancer, Street Horner, and Alex Smith because of just some last minute changes. And that's the type of stuff that happens at Wodapalooza. Last year it happened with Sarah Sigmund's daughter. She had to recruit a couple new athletes to her team. So stuff like that's going to happen. So, you're not going to be 100% when it comes to Wodapalooza. But that's the fun thing.
And also, it takes time to write the article. So, thankfully we have a relationship with Wodapalooza, and we were able to get this information last week to be able to kind of create these. But I do know that there are a few athletes, big and small, that there might be some questions about why they're missing from our Instagram post or the article. And so we'll address those as well when we get to each division.
Yeah, but we'll start. Go ahead, Chad.
You see, that brings up an interesting idea we should do for another show. Is there should be a competition that has a roster of athletes, and on a Friday night they draft teams, and Saturday, Sunday they compete.
All right.
I think there's some potential there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got to give them an incentive to get there. So if you can get us a pretty gnarly sponsor, that'll encourage these athletes to actually want to show up.
Well, Wodapalooza could do that, right? Because a lot of the individuals come for individual competition. Be like, hey, we'll spring up on a team day instead of just having teams picked.
Yeah.
PC, let's do this in kind of the reverse order that we often do it. Let's start with the top 4 guys that are returning from last year. Then we'll go to that group that I highlighted. But then I do want to kind of end each division with the athletes that I didn't write about. There's up to 40 athletes competing in each division. It's a lot to write about every single one of those. So in the articles we featured kind of starting from the top down, but there's plenty of athletes 20 through 40 that are certainly worth at least having a little conversation about as well.
Yeah. So I'll just pull up the list all together, and I'll have you. We'll just start open forum. So Brian, you brought up the top 4, and obviously those names: Ricky Gerard, Roman, Brent, Patrick Vellner. I mean, that's a powerhouse. I mean, that just those 4. You include them in any competition, it's gonna be a lot of fireworks. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So, yeah, Ricky Gerard, huh? Defending.
Well, So those were the top 4 athletes at TYR Wodapalooza 2023. And they're all coming back this year to compete individually. The order of finish last year is not the order that I'm predicting for this year. Last year, it was Ricky, Roman, Pat, and then Brent. I see it being very similarly, but I obviously put Brent into the 3 spot and Pat in the 4 spot. And before I kind of explain why I've decided to do that, well, if you read the article, you may already know why. I just want to get Bella and Chad's take on these top 4. Chad, obviously being Canadian, will have biases and include both of them in the podium at the omission of either Ricky or Roman. So let's start with Bella, and then we'll go to Chad and see first of all, is there anyone else you would put in the top 4 besides those guys?
Absolutely not. I like your top 4, but I found that I was told that I favor the Aussies. And so when I was coming up with my list, I said, okay, despite Ricky being defending champ, doing well at Dubai, he'll be second place, and I don't think he'll be mad at me for it. So I have Pat standing on the podium. I've got Ricky right below him, and then I have Roman. And I do think the point spread is going to be just stupid close. I think it'll be those 3 kind of taking away with the weekend, and I have Brent in 4th. So there's no surprises there. I think they are absolutely the top 4 athletes in the field, even, greater field of CrossFit right now. Definitely Pat is going to be on top. And it was going through the comments of the post a little bit ago when it went up, and people were actually pretty mad that you didn't have Pat up there. And so when I'm kind of cross-referencing mine, I was like,
I think he does it on purpose. He does it on purpose.
It's so funny to me to read some of those comments. Like people are like, Pat's going to remind you. And it's did you forget the conversation that I had last week with John Young when I was defending Pat ahead of Medeiros for the totality of the Madison era rankings? Like I am and have always been the biggest Vellner fan. And honestly, it's because of what he's done on the floor and as just kind of circumstantially as the first big athlete that I met in 2018. And he treated me like with respect right out the gate, and he always has. So the picks that I make have nothing to do with me knowing about their history or not, or liking the individual or not. And I will, like I said, explain my rationale here for all those picks. But Chad, what do you think about these top 4 guys? Where do you have the Canadians finishing?
Yeah, so my initial thought, looking this week in the top 4, yes, I agree, is the top 4. I think, maybe I'm biased, and maybe I just hope, I think Fikowski comes top, beats Roman specifically, especially after the past few events and how he's gotten so close. I think he's looking for some revenge and for him to nip that in the butt, and I think he's coming after him, and I think Pat's going to help him somehow, some way. I don't think Ricky's up top. I mean, I don't know if on purpose help, but I think Pat will continue to kind of be in the middle to separate and give Fikowski a little bit of help.
So you have Fikowski 1, and then you have
1, Roman 2,
okay,
and Ricky or Vellner. Let's say Ricky 3rd.
Jeez.
Okay. Oh, so you're with me on Pat off the podium. Canada. So here's the thing, because Chad alludes to something that's absolutely critical, and so does Bella. When Chad says that Brent is looking for potentially some revenge against Roman, don't forget what happened at Rogue, is that Brent was occupying that 3rd spot for a majority of the competition, and in the final event, Roman tied him on points and took the tiebreaker to earn that podium spot at Brent's expense. This story actually goes all the way back to 2019 in Dubai, where Brent edged out Vellner and Roman for the top spot of the podium at the Dubai CrossFit Championships that year and 2019 sanctional year. So these guys have been battling and duking it out at the top level of CrossFit competitions for years in the off season. And just this past December in Dubai, Roman and Ricky went head to head. And even though it looked like a runaway on paper with Roman beating Ricky by 89 points at the end of the competition, he earned 84 points from him on the obstacle course event number 1, which is a bit of, it is fitness related. It is, an execution thing. Like there's tons of stuff you could say about it. But once that was out of the way, Ricky basically chewed that gap all the way back to 0. Like he made up 84 out of those 89 points over the next series of events. And the thing about this year at Wodapalooza is, my understanding, there's only 500 points available. That means every individual workout, which I believe we already know all of them, is worth 20% of the points. And the one thing that we haven't seen at all this entire season is the elite athletes swimming at all.
Yep.
And so when you look at Vellner's second place at the games, Vellner's first live win in a Rogue Invitational, he also won the online version of it. Those are both coming in events with no swimming. We're going to swim. And we're swimming twice in one workout, and that's worth 20% of the total points. And no matter how much better Vellner may have got at swimming, those other 3 guys are just a lot better than him at swimming. And the field is full of good swimmers. I don't think that the points that Pat gives up on the swimming workout are going to be enough. I don't think there's enough other points remaining for him to make up the gap against that guys that are that well-rounded and that much better at swimming.
I totally agree with that, Brian. I mean, if it's, you stated in your article, again, the swimming and also the lifting event, because all 4 of those guys are equally as strong. I mean, I guess they're with the snatch. I guess there could be said, I guess Fikowski might be the strongest snatcher of the 4, with probably Roman or Ricky being either 3rd or 4th. But that gap is going to be a lot closer than the swimming event. And Fikowski is one of the better swimmers in this field. He will probably, out of that group of 4, he will win. Ricky, most people think because he's an Aussie, he's a great swimmer, and he's a great swimmer, but not for an Aussie, as he would say. He would be the first one to say that swimming is not his, greatest Aussie attribute, but he's still good enough and better than probably Roman and Vellner in this field.
Well, and when you think about some of the other workouts that they've designed this year, you think about the interval style workout, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes. It starts with rowing and wall balls. There's only 35 reps of chest to bar pull-ups, and historically, high volume chest to bar pull-ups is one of any kind of pull-ups is Brent Fikowski's weakness against the top division, just because of his range of motion. Then you have 30-inch box jumps. That's another good movement for him, and 100-pound dumbbell snatch. That workup lines out great for him. You talk about barbell cycling and toes to bar and barbell cycling and bar muscle ups. This is it's parallel bars, parallel bar traverse in that workout. Parallel, Brent's great on the parallel bars. He won that workout at the games. Hang cleans and shoulder to overhead. He's cycle moderate weight as good as anyone. Like, the programming is phenomenal for him. And the final workout has lunging, rope climbs, toes to bar, and handstand walking. There's nothing bad for Fikowski in this entire slate of programming. And I was actually seriously tempted to do what Chad did and pick him to win this thing outright. I think that it's going to be a serious showdown between these guys. And even though Brent has just been on the heels of most of them for the recent competitions, 4th at the games, 4th at Rogue, and just missing that podium, I actually kind of feel like he's the safest podium pick of any male in the field.
We lost Bella there for a second.
we lost Bella because she realized that Chad and I's arguments were just ironclad.
No, I like what you're saying. No, I freeze every single time, and I think it makes me look like I'm thinking really hard, coming up with something really crazy and insightful to say, but it's just my stream freezes.
Now, despite the fact that I've said all of that about why Vellner will miss the podium, if you're not familiar with why people are so frustrated with that and even have referred to him as Mr. Wodapalooza, he's a 3-time champion of Wodapalooza, and he was 3rd place last year. There's only 4 times of competing at Wodapalooza as an individual, and he's never missed the podium. But the fact that he was 3rd to Roman and Ricky last year is notable. And all of the things that I just said about how great this programming is on paper for Fikowski, while the swimming, which is historically one of Pat's biggest challenges in competitions compared to the top competitors, is playing as a bigger role than almost ever. You have to get in the water twice, and it's counting for 20% of the points. I just think that no matter how good, I think Pat has a chance to win 2 workouts and miss the podium this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you're wrong.
I think it's. I mean, the more and more you guys have all discussed this, I'm leaning more towards. Brent could win this. Like he could win Wodapalooza, and if that's the case, look at the offseason. Look at the offseason. Then I mean, look at you have a different games champion, you have a different Dubai champion, you have a different road champion, a different Wodapalooza champion. We haven't had that parity in those type of events, those 4 major events in a long time. And you can throw in Down Under in there as well. I mean, well, Ricky competed on a team, but you know, the parity. I mean, we already knew the parity was going to go. It was there going into the season, but this.
Basically, I mean, if either Ricky or Brent wins this, then we have a quadruple crown. I'm gonna just dub that the new term, quadruple crown. 4 different male champions.
Yeah. Why do people insist calling it a triple crown? I mean, you can have other numbers, you know.
Yeah.
And I've been having this conversation with John Young and Tyler Watkins and J.R. Howell, you know, privately for the whole offseason. Like, this is just the state of CrossFit for men right now. You give me, and usually I don't include Brent in this list, but if you want to throw him in the mix, why not? But add to those 4 guys, Jeff Adler and Justin Medeiros, and you tell me they're all going to compete one weekend. I don't know the workouts. Fast forward to Monday, if you said any one of those guys won, it's not crazy to believe it. And to me, it's like it's the coolest thing because we had Froning and then we had Fraser. Even the year that Ben Smith won it, people were expecting Fraser to win, and then once he won, he never lost anything again. And even the past 2 years where there's been some question marks, it's never been 4, 5, 6 guys lining up, and literally people would not like any one of these guys could win, and that's pretty cool.
And these guys want to win because there's 75 grand on the line.
No kidding.
Which is
75
it's the third biggest first place prize that's available to them in terms of competition earnings throughout the entire year after Rogan and the game. So it's a big payday. It's a big stage. It's a short competition, 2 days, but I think it's going to be burn it down and see who the last man standing is. And it's as exciting as a competition as I've felt for a 2-day competition probably ever.
Yeah. I mean,
I have a question about the top 4 guys. Will they, of all the event winners, will they win every event, or is someone else going to be able to win an event?
So the thing is, none of these guys are going to be in the lead after event number 1. The first event is a snatch plus a hang snatch, and it's only 2 attempts, so there is an element of execution. But just looking down the list, you got guys like Jack Farlow, Guy Maieros, Bronislaw Lenkovic. You could just stop right there. That are all going to probably do that for 300 pounds or more. I mean, it's pretty crazy. And there's plenty of other strong athletes too. So it will be, like Patrick said, it will actually set the tone for the weekend. All of those guys are likely to be in kind of for a snatch plus a hang snatch in that 275 to 290 range is what I'm kind of thinking. But there's a lot of other men that will also be in that range. We're about to talk about the depth of this field next. And then there's this little wrinkle that Wodapalooza's put in, which is going to make athletes make a decision on the field of play. You can do overhead squats for a tie break, and that tie break could have massive implications because I don't think it's out of the question for 10 guys out of 40 to snatch the same weight during that competition. And there are 40 registered. I do want to acknowledge Arturo Torres, who was added to the roster after I wrote this article. I think someone mentioned on Instagram that I was missing him. And absolutely right. Arturo Torres is registered for the elite field at Wodapalooza. And I'm not saying I would pick him 40th, but he would be the 40th name on this list. So any last thoughts about those top 4 guys before we move into the second stack of guys, which is basically 20 deep?
Last thoughts. I hope I'm right. And I hope you all are wrong. And then we can move on to 4 through 10.
So let's keep this is a great frame to keep up here for Chad to just bask in his national pride of Canada. This is 2 years ago at Wodapalooza where we had an all-Canadian podium. Yes, Patrick?
Taken by a Canadian, by the way. This picture was taken by a Canadian, so just want to recognize David from Training Day Media.
Yeah, absolutely. Give David that credit for sure. Yeah. So on second place that year, I can't tell who's the left and the right, but that's Sam Cornoyer on your left and Alexander Caron on the right. Both of them are in this field. Both of them are amongst, I think, 18 athletes that I feature in this article after those top 4 guys, all of 18 of those athletes have a chance to make the top 10, in my opinion, if the weekend goes perfectly for them. I saw some people saying I think actually James Sprague said I had Luke Parker too low. Some people were asking about Guy Maieros in 16th. And, you know, this is this common thread that I'm always saying, like, I know how good all these guys are, but there's only 10 spots for the top 10 5 for the top 5, 20 for, like, you can't make extra room. And so something's got to give at some point. And when you look down and you see Luke Parker on my rankings in 22nd, and you know he was 25th or 6th at the CrossFit Games, that's like, bro, yo, what are you doing? But it's like, hey, all of those guys have either have also been at the CrossFit Games this past year, have Wodapalooza or semifinal finishes that are, kind of. Luke Parker's semifinal in Orlando last year was an outlier compared to everything else that he's done in his career. Can he back it up? Absolutely. Will he? I don't know. That's what we're about to find out. And I'm really looking forward, actually, to seeing him in another live competition setting that's not the CrossFit Games, and see if he can stack another good finish on top of that. Because prior to that, he was 7th place at the Fittest Experience last January, which is not a great finish when you look at the strength of that field. So to me, this is very much an opportunity for Luke to kind of affirm or deny that performance from the North America East semifinal. And I'm going to take if he finishes 8th or 10th at this competition, I'll be happy for him. I just kind of need to see that affirmed again in order to kind of ride that wave with him in terms of predictions for the future.
I agree with you. Honestly, I think where you had him is it's fair based on recent historical events with him. I think he's a phenomenal athlete, but if you're thinking of 1 through 10, 11 through 15, and then, 16 through 20, it's really tough to have any sort of argument of how him being in there.
Chad, let's go to the Canadian guys. So I've got Cornwall kind of the best of the rest of this group. I think that this kind of competition format is really good for him. I don't think we have gotten the best version of Cornwall at the games over the years for one reason or another when he's competed individually. And then I have Alexander Caron 10th. He has been 3rd 2 years ago and 8th last year. Obviously, he had the pec problem during semifinals and was removed from competition. He qualified through the qualifier, so he will be seated in the bottom half of the field to start the competition, but I think he has the chance to climb his way all the way up into the top 10. How do you feel about the other Canadians that I've picked for top 10 here, Chad?
Yeah, I think Sam makes sense. I think we always, everyone's always expecting big things from him, and he just hasn't always been able to really, really show it all the time when there's injuries or just not performing at his highest. But I like the pick at 5, and yeah, Alexander Caron, I think top 10 for sure. But if I'm looking past 10, I'm not sure if anyone else breaks in the top 10. I mean, there probably would be an underdog of some sort.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. But Bella, looking at the guys I have 5 through 10 there, is there anyone there that you think I'm either underselling or overselling?
So I actually disagreed with you a bit here from the 5 through 10. I had Nick Matthew in 5. So he is, jumped up above Sam. And then below Nick, I actually had Alex. And then I had Sam. And so I think.
And you're saying Sam Cornwall, because there's also Samuel Quant.
And then Sam Quant I had below Sam. So I went Sam. I think Nick has been just on an upward trajectory. And he's one of those athletes. He does very well with fun competitions. I think that's where he thrives. He reminds me a lot, to be honest, of Noah Olson, where when the crowd is there and they're behind him, he does a lot better. And so while, he is a phenomenal athlete, I think Wodapalooza is a place where he will thrive more because you're going to see way more people in crop tops that are cheering for him, and he's going to really play with the crowd. And it sounds ridiculous, but when it comes to live performances and competition, I think Waza is really where he's going to thrive. So I had him in 5th. And then Alex, what happened at semis was disappointing, but I had high hopes for him at semis. And so I kind of just displaced those. And then I'm bringing those back to reality here, which is why I had him above Sam Cornier. But to be honest, I don't think you're wrong. I think what you have is very reasonable, but I disagreed with you a little bit.
PC, when you see Spencer Panchik and James Sprague there, do you think those are reasonable athletes to expect a top 10 performance out of this field?
I'm glad you asked me that. You must have known I was going to say something. I think Spencer Panchik is one of those guys on an upward trajectory. I actually think he's probably going to be better than 8th. He might be fighting for that top 5. I know he's been kind of quiet this offseason, but that's for a reason. He recently got married, but talking to his coach, he's training. I mean, he's someone I would really keep an eye on. He's very unassuming. He's not even considered in the same class with Saxon at this point. But Spencer made the games. He looked really good the first couple days of the games. Then I believe he was sick and he had some issues with an illness while he was at the games, and still finished really well. James is one of those guys. I just, I love him as a person. I know it sounds like I'm about to break up with him.
I know. What are you? Wait, is it him or is it you?
It's me. No, everyone. I mean, James is a great guy. I just don't know if this format, especially with not this many of, I think James is one of those guys. If you put him in a 4-day competition, he's going to thrive. A 2-day competition where you're given a strength test, which we know James, that's one of his weaknesses, is his strength, which he's been working really hard on this offseason. We've seen it. We've seen him work on that. I just don't know if he's a top 10 material, especially when you have names like Colton Mertens, Henrik Haapalainen. I mean, we can go down that list.
Sure.
But I hope
we will go down the list.
We will.
Yeah. I do hope James proves me wrong. But this is the type of format I'd like to see him against this caliber of athletes. I want to see him in that final heat, in that heat with the Vellners, the Ricky Gerards, and I want to see how comfortable he is in that. And I want to see that fire in him.
You just lost the invite to his wedding, that's for sure.
I know. And I'm sorry, James. I'm so sorry, dude.
And Wodapalooza, just from a formatting perspective, and a lot of the competition fields are 20 athletes on the floor at a time, so you do get to see more athletes with more opportunities to test themselves against the best of the field on more of the workouts throughout the competition. But I'll start with Spencer as well. Spencer Panchik 2 times has competed at Wodapalooza as an individual before. He's competed on teams there with his brothers going all the way back to 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of his brothers, 2 years ago when they all competed together, he beat them both. He also beat guys like Taylor Self, Jason Hopper, Colton Mertens, Tim Paulson, James Sprague, Vigneault, and a host of other games athletes. The only people who beat him that year were the 3 Canadians we already talked about, Cole Sager, Dallin Pepper, and no longer competing in the sport of CrossFit, Phil Toon. So Spencer Panchik certainly has top 10 potential because he's never finished outside of the top 7 before. And even with the depth of this field, I think that, he snatched 275 as a 21-year-old kid on the stage of Wodapalooza with both of his brothers in 2017. Snatching is a great strength of his. He's good in the water. He's good with the cycling rate. I think though, he's it's cool to talk about these 2 guys in combination because there's a little bit of the antithesis reasons that I picked them there, but pretty much I think Spencer's going to have a really strong run across the board. He's not going to win anything, but I don't think he's going to give away any big points on any of the workouts. James Sprague, I see having basically the opposite. I think this guy can win the swimming workout, like win it, take all the points. I think the snatch is a huge question for him, but he's been working on it. He's PR'd his snatch a couple times in the past year, I believe. So I think it's going to be about execution and just hitting his numbers and just let the chips fall where they will. But it'll be a bottom half finish is my expectation for that one. But for the same reasons as Fikowski, I think the workout that starts with the rowing and the wall balls and the box jumps and the dumbbell snatch is the strength. Like his strength has improved in the cycling moderate weight direction. So just the small number of chest to bar pull-ups compared to everything else in that workout, I think is in his favor. Rope climbs, toes to bars, handstand walking, and lunging. I think these are all also really good things for him compared to some of the, to have them all kind of paired together. So I think he'll have a little bit of an answer on the bar muscle up, shoulder to overhead, parallel bar, and hang clean workout. But I think that there's a chance for him to take a win, a couple top 5s, and that can be enough. Like when you are able to get those big hits, and a lot of these guys are just exchanging finishes of 10th through 12th or 10th through 20th, even though they don't have as many lows, you'll end up ahead of most of those guys. And that's why I snuck James into the top 10 here.
I also think something that it's not physical related, but he does have a bit of a home field advantage living in Florida. He does not have to travel as far as everybody else. Yeah.
No, James is a gypsy now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think
gypsy is in digital nomad gypsy, or where are we living?
I think he's spending he's done this in the past, and I think that's where, and obviously someone correct me if I'm wrong. He lives in Washington right now, And then, but he has been training. You know, we've seen that he's been down at Mayhem a couple times to train with Dom and some of the people down there. But his coach, he is still with Brute Strength, and he's still, his coach is still Matt Torres. So I imagine he'll probably snowbird. Is that what? Yeah, snowbird.
Yes,
At
snowbird.
some point move.
He's a young snowbird.
Yeah, exactly.
Very young.
I mean, you're snowbirding.
I'm down by Naples, Florida right now. I can tell you all about that. He's not.
You're
candidate.
You're snowbirding right now. But I do anticipate James making the move to Jacksonville and training with Dallin and whoever Fee in Jacksonville with the Brute crew there. So.
All right, I want to play a little fun game with you guys here. I'm gonna let Chad go first, Bella second, and Patrick, you just have to clean up with whatever's remaining. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Throw it back to the list with all the athletes. I'm gonna name 3 guys that I have outside the top 10. Chad, you got to pick one of them and make a case for me that they're gonna finish in the top 10. Bella will have to pick for the remaining 2, and Patrick has to argue for the last guy. The 3 athletes are Colton Mertens, Henrik Happalainen, and Guy Maieros.
Okay, like
well,
this.
You name one of the ones that I was thinking. So I think I go first, right? Let's say Guy, because 1, the snatch, so that's an event win. 2, we haven't seen him in a while. He's a pretty explosive athlete, so I think outside of the workouts aren't super big on the endurance side of things, so I think he can maybe get in there, maybe 1 or 2 top 10 finishes. And I think he seems like a showstopper kind of guy. So I feel out of those 3, he's the flashy one. So I'll take that pick.
And Guy, just for
because he's guaranteed one. He's guaranteed 1 win at least. I think between Farlow, Braun, and him, I think I'm excited to see Jack and him go head to head, but I think he's probably still got it.
Jack Farlow, another Canadian in the field, of course, going to give him a nod there. It's distinguished which Jack you're talking about, since the screen currently shows a different Jack that Patrick will have some favoritism for. But Guy Maieros has won the RX division at Wodapalooza, which is the 2nd division of the year prior to making the games, and then he for the 2nd time, because of course he was there in 2019. And he was 11th last year, just narrowly missing the top 10. So has some good experience and success at Wodapalooza in the past, and I think a good pick. Bella, between Henrik Happalainen, who was in the top 10 last year when he took 9th, and Colton Mertens, who has never made the top 10. He was 12th 2 years ago. Who do you think has a better chance this time around?
So I actually had Henrik in 9th when I was doing my rankings, and I did it just based on just kind of long-term historical performance from the games and then also semifinals. I just think Henrik has a better chance given the field and given the workouts that we're going to see. He's strong, he's consistent, he's got great conditioning. I think where he will thrive is where Colton will not do as well. And so I had him right above James Sprague. So James was still actually in my top 10 if we want to, go back to it. But I think it'll be Henrik, and I actually had Guy in my lower 5. So if I'm talking about, what Chad was saying, I think Guy's a phenomenal athlete. I don't have the confidence in him from last year to say that he's going to be in the top 10. I don't believe it. I think I know, going against Mayhem. I know that's big.
I know.
I know. And I went against freaking Australians too for the first time ever. So, but truly, I think when I was coming into it, I had Colton in top 15 because he is a freakishly strong athlete. And I think he'll do very well with the gymnastics and then also with the strength events that we're going to see here. But I think Henrik will just kind of edge both of them out, and he'll be kind of taking that top 10, and the rest will be in that next 5.
All right, PC, give some hope to the Colton Mertens fans. Can this guy make the top 10 at Wodapalooza this year?
Of course he can.
We love the muscle hamster, though. We do. We're not mad about him.
The muscle hamster. There's so many people that nickname's been given to. But I think Colton definitely has a ability to do that. I mean, we've talked to him. He's dedicated this whole offseason to just getting better, especially in his weaknesses. And he knows what his strengths are, so he's been training for it. That's the reason why he did a competition and put himself out there for a competition like Crash Crucible, to test those weaknesses, to test what he's been working on, to gather information. He's a lot of people don't realize this or probably know this because he's so quiet, but he kind of reminds me of Fakowski in terms of how he evaluates and how he analyzes things. He's very, I guess, deliberate in what he does and how he trains. And it's kind of if watch his latest YouTube video where he breaks down programming, and it shows you the type of person, where his mind's at heading into the 2024 game season. And I think that's why he's competing at a place like Wodapalooza. He wouldn't be competing there and spending money to be there unless he thought he could win money. That's how I look.
Colton Mertens is, in my opinion, is one of the best athletes that if you're aspiring to be an elite athlete in this sport that you could learn from, because he's, taken what he's been given in terms of his physical assets and abilities, and he's found a way to, over time, continually refine his approach and then continually improve his performance against the best athletes in the world. And every time that we say it can't be done, he seems to show us that it can be done. When I look at the workouts on paper here, obviously the swimming, running, biking, and double under in one go looks like a challenge for him relative to a really tall, long, big, and aerobic field that we have top to bottom. But outside of that, there's nothing I've seen from him over the past 2 years that says that he won't do very well on the rest of the events. The snatch will be certainly an interesting one because it's going to be small margins for big points. But when it comes down to fitness, which is basically what the other three are testing, Colton's going to surprise and impress and do well. And I think he's going to, like I have him ranked, they're going to be flirting with his first top 10 finish in Miami. PC brings up Crash Crucible, and there was one athlete who beat Colton Mertens at Crash Crucible. I have him ranked 13th. It's Austin Hatfield. He is already been dubbed the future games champion by one John Young and the king of Rookie Hill. Do you guys, Bella, what do you think about Hatfield? And
he's a mayhem guy. Come on.
13th in semifinals. He's mayhem.
Winner of Crash Crucible. This is his third ever live competition. What's the ceiling for this guy this weekend?
So I haven't seen him perform live. And so for me, if I'm going based on that he's a mayhem athlete, I think he's going to do really well. But if I'm going on things that are, non-biased, I think he's showing great upward trajectory. And I think if he's going to do well against any field, well, why not give him, 20 of the best possible athletes in the world right now to see where he actually stacks up as a rookie. And also it's Wodapalooza, and we've seen several athletes come in and say, hey, this is my year, this is my show, look what I can do. I think if I'm thinking of a rookie in my mind that came out, I was even going to say Annika Greer. What was it, 2 years ago?
Yep.
Yeah, she had a phenomenal performance and it put her on the map. And so if Austin, doing Crash Crucible and now he's coming to Waza, if he can kind of perform similarly, let's see what he can do. Let's see if he actually belongs on the top of Rookie Hill above some people that I'm very highly believing in. So I'm excited. I haven't seen him live yet, so I'm excited to see what he can do. I think 12th, or you have him 13th. I think that's bold, but I don't think it's unreasonable.
I don't think it's bold, depending on what his mustache game looks like at Wodapalooza. That's all.
Are you a mustache guy, Pat? Are you into the mustaches?
It's not whether I'm into it or not. It's whether he has it or not. That's what.
Okay, so we should let him know he's got a week to grow one.
Well, no, he already has it grown. It's a matter of if he trims it or not. But anyways,
Chad, I'm going to give you a second to think about this. I'm going to ask Patrick a question, then I'm going to ask you about Kalian Souza and Kaique Cerveni, the big Brazilians, and your expectations for them.
Hell Chad.
But before that, Patrick,
yes.
Here you got featured on the screen Jack Rosema. One spot ahead of him in my rankings, I have John Wood. These guys were one spot away from each other at Wodapalooza last year, one spot away from each other, and both within 3 spots or 4 spots of making the games out of the North America West at the semifinals. Jack Rosema through the U.S. Army Warrior Fitness. Is this a guy that you believe can make a push to the top 10 in Wodapalooza and maybe challenge for a game spot again this year?
I definitely, him and John, I definitely see that. I mean, you have him grouped there with Austin Hatfield and Henrik, and I believe, and Colton. I think they're all pretty close. I mean, Colton, I think, separates himself because obviously he has more success, and we all know that I'm a big Colton fan. But right below them, I think Jack and John have the capabilities of being someone like Colton. I mean, they're very similar in their strengths and weaknesses. Jack is a mayhem athlete. Like you said, you mentioned he's with the Army Warrior Fitness team. This is what he does. That's his job in the Army. He's a lawyer for the Army, but he finally got transferred to Fort Knox, and that's what he's doing. He's just training and getting paid for. He is probably, and I made this argument in the past with someone like Chandler when he was with the Army Warrior Fitness team. They're like the true professionals in CrossFit because they actually collect health insurance. I mean, they're being paid like professional athletes. They show up, they train, and they get paid well. They get a paycheck from it. They don't have to go to competitions or they don't have to fulfill sponsorships. Jack Roseman doesn't have sponsorships. He has a U.S. Army paying for it. So that's what he has. That he has over 1 million soldiers supporting him. And then someone like John Wood, who that guy,
Jack Roseman was like it's like Tom Hardy in Warrior. When he walks out on the stage, everyone's going to start singing the Marines for him or whatever.
Yeah, and I think I technically still outrank Jack, but I'm not going to say anything. But we saw Jack at the Zelos Invitational a year ago, and he finished, I believe, 5th. And then last year he was fighting. He was in a lane right next to Roman at one point in the competition, and he's been there. So the bright lights competing against athletes, he's been there now. He's got the experience. John Wood is another guy. He competed at Grant. We saw him at Granite Games. Actually, that's the first time I saw him was Granite Games 2 years ago, and I was very impressed by him. Guy is
last year. He was regularly there in the top heat. Like I said, he's just outside the top 10 at both Wodapalooza 2023 and semifinals at West Coast. And he took exception to the place that I ranked him in the global rankings. Like these are guys that are not just fit, but they're confident, and they're not like, even though they haven't had these podium finishes at the big events, they come there full of confidence and belief, and with good reason. Like these guys are exceptional. They will put you to shame in everything that you try to do relative to them. This is an incredibly deep field, and the fact that I have John, Jack, and Austin where I do on this rankings is basically me telling you that I believe in these guys as being amongst the elite in the sport with the chance to make the games in 2024.
Yeah, don't look at the number by the game. Look at the company they're in. That's what I look at. Don't look at the placing that you have them ranked at. Look at the company they're in. When you're between someone like Guy and Colton Mertens and Henrik Haapalainen, who are all games veterans who are well known in the sport, that's saying a lot. You should definitely.
Everyone else on this list has made the CrossFit Games.
Exactly. So when you but those are the names I meant that people know. They know those names. So when you're in between them, hey, that good on you. That means you're doing something good, and you belong in that spot. Don't look at the ranking.
All right, Chad, we've given you a few minutes to prepare your case here. Kaylee and Susan and Keiki Cerveni both beat Guimaeros at the South American semifinal last year. They had similar performances at the games in the bottom 10. They both competed in Dubai, finished one spot apart from each other. Do you think these guys can beat Guy again?
I'm going to say no, based on my last answer, saying that I think he's going to perform a little higher than he said.
Go Canada.
Thank you.
North America. Go North America. That's what you are. You're a North America fan.
America.
I think where you have them is probably appropriate. I actually think like you could flip them because they have been so close in their competition. I think, like based on their finish at Dubai, based on their finish in Brazil, I think I don't know, it seems like it's a toss-up. They seem like they go back and forth kind of at each competition, kind of duking it out. So I can't see them performing more better than Guy. I think Guy in Miami and Wodapalooza is a good spot for him. So I'll take them where they are.
Keiki was in this field last year, finished in the mid-20s, and he won that semifinal. Souza did get the better of him at the games, and then it was like a couple points between them in Miami and in Dubai, and a very similar performance. I think these guys are legit. I don't think that was a mistake that they had good performances and qualified for the games. I think that absolutely If there are only 2 qualifying spots out of the South America semifinal, again, it's going to be a battle for and anyone who gets those spots is going to be well deserved. And I love the fact that they're getting some competition reps at these high level events and taking advantage of that this year. I think it's going to, neither of them are are too old to be competing a couple times in the off season in these types of competitions, and I think that it's going to be in their favor to have this experience as they try to make a second run at the games.
I think it's
I
fun
think
too to
both of
have
them.
strength of field. Oh, sorry. I was going to say it's fun to have strength of field in South America. If we have these 3 guys that are consistently duking it out and battling against each other, that's pretty awesome to show that there's 3 very solid athletes coming out of that region. Because, people are always talking about, oh, well, some regions are stronger than others, and they are. But to say that these 3 are coming out of the same one, that's awesome. And that's encouraging for years to come as people see what they're doing, say, oh, cool, like I can do that too. I can train with them, or I want to compete like that. It's just, you have to know it's possible. And these 3 are showing you it's possible for the entire region.
Well, and the other thing that's really cool that TYR Wodapalooza has created this season is the LatAm Cup.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect
And
segue.
we're not going to spend too much time talking about it, but there are several other athletes that are legitimate competitive contenders to make potentially a run at a game spot in South America that are going to get to compete, and we will be covering them on the broadcast. Agustin Riquelme is in that field, Anderon Primo, Isaiah Vidal, Roldan Goldbaum. Bedarte is not in that field.
Oh,
He's not currently
okay.
registered. Vinicius Solben. So tune into the stream if you're interested in South America. They've had and some of their up and comers and the guys that, like I said, could be in the mix because Wodapalooza has done a great job of incorporating that over the past couple of years and giving them a chance, just like these guys, to get some high level reps at a competition like this. Last thoughts on the top 20. I want to go to the kind of the bottom 20 and just highlight a few people who came through the qualifier that I think are kind of notable and worth being aware of as we head into the weekend.
I think Braun could be top 15, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought him up. Actually, he was so impressive to me in Dubai. I mean, strength events are strength events for guys like this. But what the work that he's done with Justin Kotler, as I write about in the article, and the way that he's parlayed that into some specific event performances in Dubai, he had I think he had his best finish out other than the lift on the longest event of the weekend that involved some some conditioning and some lightweight cycling of stuff. And I think that kind of base that he's been building and that commitment to expanding his horizons in terms of being a more well-rounded athlete with Kotler is starting to come to fruition, and he's no longer a one-trick pony in my mind. So definitely excited to see Braun out there again.
I agree.
All right, we do have a couple. The other 2 guys on this list that I featured in the article were Vigneault and Luke Parker. We talked about Parker. Vigneault, another Canadian. It was a few years ago. There were 6 Canadians that made the games, and one of these things that I put out there was, can we have 6 Canadians make the top 20 at the CrossFit Games? And I think that 4 of them did that year, and 2 of them were kind of close. But Vigneault is actually, of all those guys, he's the veteran. He's the one that was competing at the games before any of them, and he's still doing it. So even though I have him kind of ranked lower, and I do feel that he's kind of tailing off compared to top 10 games athletes worldwide, Vigneault has been doing this for nearly a decade at the highest level. And, he's one of these guys that's just continuing to show that you can be great in this sport over the course of 10 years. So we'll see how he does this time around, especially compared to some of those other guys. I have Farlow a couple spots ahead of him, who's obviously the youngest of that group. So super depth on the Canadian men's side for sure. But looking at the rest of this list here, I got a couple guys in mind, but I'll just kind of open it up. Is there anyone that you see there that you're either excited to see, or you think that maybe I haven't given as much respect as they might be due for this weekend?
I think Will Bennett's go. You can go ahead. I went first last time. You go.
I really like Drake Lewis. I know you've seen Drake Lewis in person. He's a Wasatch athlete out of Utah. I think he's going to surprise someone. I believe he's a pretty decent swimmer too. I know Luke Parker is a really good swimmer as well, but I think Drake Lewis could be one of those athletes that sneaks up into that top 20. Someone to keep an eye. He's a young guy. You've seen him, like I said, you've seen him live in person. I think he's someone to keep an eye on.
Bella, who you got?
So I was excited for both Will Bennett and then also Harry Lightfoot. I think they're both kind of newcomers to elite competition. And it's just something, it honestly, it reminds me every single time I see a depth of field like we have now. There's the elites, which are the obvious top 10 in my mind, and then even kind of the 5 after that. And then there's the rest. And I would say Will Bennett and Harry are on their way to becoming like pretty solid professional CrossFitters. I wouldn't put them in the same argument as the top 20, but I think, being right there, kind of the 22, 25 range, I think it's fair, but I'm excited to see what they can do in the next coming years because I don't think they're hitting their stride just yet.
Yeah, Will Bennett's he's about 30 now. He's been competing at semifinals, I think, going back to like 2016, 18. He's had a lot of experience. He had a pretty good showing last year at semifinals. I think that he's one of these guys that's kind of found a second gear as he's gotten closer to 30. And so, obviously giving him respect here, picking him pretty close to the top half of a stacked field. And Harry Lightfoot, yeah, he's a guy who's had some really, really big ups and showed a ton of promise. In semifinals, we got a little bit of good, a little bit of bad from him last year. He seems like he's gone back to the drawing board and kind of doubled down on himself. I saw someone posted a picture of him walking along the boardwalk there and tagged me in it earlier today, or a video. He looks like he's leaned out a little bit. I think he's one of the more intriguing athletes. Like if I was going to try to pick an athlete that could potentially outperform my prediction by 10 spots, Harry's the type of guy that I feel like could sneakily do that this weekend, depending on, he might be one of those that's like tapered and primed for this event since he hasn't really done much else in the off season, and there is still so much time until the next semifinal. So if he gets off to a hot start, I wouldn't be surprised if Harry has a pretty good weekend here. Chad, I don't know if you know any of these guys too well. Is there anyone on here that's got your attention?
I don't know a lot of them. The softball pick is Luke Parker. I know you said at the start you think this is where you sort of have him, but it seems surprising that he would be on the outside of the top 20. I don't know who he bumps out necessarily, but I don't know if, like, I feel like Braun, I'm not sure if, I think there's a lot of big lifters in the top 20. I'm not sure if that'll be the case or not. So question marks on Luke Parker, that's all.
Yeah, we'll see for sure. I like, of this group, a guy who's really got my attention is Evan Rogers. He was, you may not have noticed, he's also approaching 30, but in the East semifinal last year, Sprague and Spencer Panchik take the last 2 spots. Hatfield and Tyler Christoffel are the guys who miss out. 4 points behind Christoffel, Evan Rogers. And then there was a pretty big drop after that. So he's a guy whose fitness is right on par with people that John Young is ranking as potentially having big breakout seasons next year. Obviously, on his rookie hill, he doesn't have space for all of these guys, but he's a name
it's a small
that if
hill.
you're not aware, yeah, it's a small hill. But if you're not aware of the names of Will Bennett and Evan Rogers, they are fringe contenders to be in contention for game spots in the North America semifinals. And like I've been saying throughout, I think that when you're that close, that doing a competition like this is a great opportunity to refine some of those skills in a high pressure setting. Semifinals is usually 3 days, 6 or 7 events. It's not that different. You have to have a high level of execution in addition to a high level of fitness. So be on the lookout for guys like Bennett and Rogers. Their performances at semifinals weren't too far off of those Rosema and Woods that we mentioned. Now it's just a matter of if they can string events or competitions like that together.
I also like CJ Gerald. He's obviously this season he's going team. They got an underdogs team. It's him, Ava George, Carson Wolf, and Mitch McClune. He's another one of those athletes. He's 29-30, I believe. And talking to Ava, and they had some training sessions there not too long ago, and they said what they were going through, it wasn't phasing him. Like the rest of the team was like laying on the ground rolling, and CJ was like, "Okay, what's up? What else we doing? Is this all we got?" So that's another guy, and it seems like we have a lot of those type of guys in this group here. You mentioned that about Evan and Will as well, in terms of being some of the older athletes who are more experienced. CJ obviously falls into that category as well.
Yeah, Tanner Balaz usually competes on a team at the CrossFit Games. Apparently, he posted he's got food poisoning and down about 7 pounds this week. So hopefully he's all right. But he's a very formidable athlete as an individual field as well. Nikita Yudendov, I think, is like 5 or 6 time fittest guy from Belarus. He's he may have had to withdraw from the semifinal last year, but he's a legitimate athlete from kind of eastern part of Europe, and then Lucas Hoyza, one of the top guys from France, I think. So those are kind of the other guys on this list. Let's just take a quick sneak peek at the bottom 10 guys here on the left side of the screen. All of them came through the qualifiers. Some of these guys we've seen compete in some off-season competitions. Actually, the guys that I have at the bottom there, Macaronas and Sforzini, were second and third, or third and second in the online qualifiers. I just don't know much about those guys, so no disrespect. They obviously did a great job in the qualifiers. I need to see that in live competition. I mean, you got guys like Trayvon Benton on this list, who's been around for a while. Joshua Hong, who I think he was over in Madrid with us, Bella. Kevin Jers has competed several competitions around Europe. So always excited. Like, look, qualifying for the Elite Division of Wodapalooza is an insane accomplishment. These guys are fit. Can they parlay that and do something memorable against this caliber of field? Remains to be seen. But that's what the competitions are for. So any last thoughts on the men's field before it's been about an hour? We're going to switch over to the women's side.
I think it's
fair. I think 31 through 39 are fair. I think if you're, coming from qualifying and you didn't know a week ago that you were going to compete. I was talking to Martin last week and he was like, I don't know if I'm competing or not. And he's coming from the Czech Republic. So if you don't know, you're not totally, you have time to prepare, but it's a little bit different. But I think it'll be interesting to see where they actually stack up, not just based on, coming in from the qualifying positions.
Awesome. Yeah, if you guys are just joining or joined late, I'm going to just give an extra shout out to Strike Movement for supporting all of our competition coverage for 2024 TYR Wodapalooza, and HTR CBD, who's going to join us as a partner just heading into the 2024 season for all of our podcasts going forward from here. Check those guys out and be on the lookout for some codes from Strike Movement throughout the weekend. This, for the first time ever that I'm aware of, will be helping to support them with. So we're going to switch over to the women's side, and I think just right off the bat, because there's been some yes, Patrick.
Let's talk about it.
There's been some confusion this morning.
There has been.
The rosters from Wodapalooza have been put out.
Not about you, Bella. There's no confusion.
No, I know. Trust me.
Don't bring your personal stuff into this. No.
So the rosters from Wodapalooza have been put out on various platforms. The last I saw, Wodapalooza themselves has not put out a full roster on Instagram or anything like that, but Morning Chalk Up did, Barbell Spin did, and of course we have our, the picks here in the article. One of the Barbell Spin has included Danielle Brandon in the roster, whereas Morning Chalk Up and us have not. I do have confirmation from the competition that at this point she is not registered for the competition, but there is a chance that she will compete. So that's TBD with regards to DB, and that's the reason why she's not on my rankings. So for those who were taking exception to who she was behind, well, she's not behind or ahead of anyone. She's not on the list because she's not currently registered for the competition. And as you see there are 40 women registered. My understanding is there's only 40 spots. So I'm not exactly sure how that's going to play out over the next few days. But let's just get it out of the way. If Danielle Brandon ends up competing this weekend, Chad, Bella, PC, where would you slot her into the mix, regardless of where you have anyone else? And it could be
Chad.
General or specific.
I will put her top 4.
That's not a spot.
No. That's totally fine. That's fine. It can be general, as general or specific as you want.
Fourth, top 4, fourth.
Bella?
If she's in competition, I say she's on the podium. She's in 3rd.
Patrick?
I got her 2nd. I'm gonna go 2nd. You know what? I'm really interested to see her. She is a very good swimmer, and we haven't been able to watch her swim in open water. I mean, we were able to watch her swim at the games 2 years ago, but this is something I've talked to her about for a while, that she's always had Wodapalooza circled on her calendar to compete, but because of injuries and just the way it flows, I mean, it just hasn't worked out.
Yeah, 2019, they swam after she was unjustly cut in 11th. 2020 was online, no swimming online. 2021, they went to the pool for the skiing and swimming, rinse and repeat. And then last year, no swimming at the games. So Yeah, huge advantage in the water. I think snatch is a good lift for her. Obviously, some strength and back concerns over the history, and the rest of the stuff looks, quite frankly, great for
Well,
Danielle. I think safe to say that if she's in the field, she's a massive threat for the podium. And I just kind of having to deal with this in a short amount of time. I like Patrick's pick of second for her right off the bat.
Yeah, and her willing to say, "Hey, I want to compete," and her camp wanting to get into this competition tells me that this is a healthy Danielle Brandon. Because if you look at past years, she's known not to compete and stuff like that if she's doesn't feel 100%. So it shows that her new coaching and brew Coach L, which happens to be John Young's coach, it's. I think she's in a good spot, and if she gets in that field, I think she'll second or I wouldn't be surprised she'd be second and pushing for that number 1 spot. Just my opinion.
Okay, so that's kind of all we're going to say about DB for now. That's right. Competition court. Yeah, like I said, Danielle Brandon currently is not registered for Wodapalooza this year. Ellie Turner might have pulled out. I don't know anything about that, yes or no.
Yeah.
But if that's the case and there's a spot, it seems like DB could be in. So we all think that she's a strong podium contention, a chance to win, and obviously would be a great addition to any field that she ever enters in. But we're going to leave her aside for now because she's not registered for the competition as of now. In my opinion, the top 3 is where I kind of draw the line here. I'll certainly leave it open to you guys to say otherwise. I have McGowan, then Lowen, then Carey, but I really could see this go any way amongst those 3. Chad, who do you like amongst those 3, or would you throw someone else on the podium that's on this list?
Yeah, I think the top 2 are right. Emma Carey, if I could think of anybody that would. Yeah, I don't know. With the little amount of events we have, I think that you're pretty good with the top 3. I was thinking whether Danny Spiegel would kind of be a little higher than 6th. I'm not sure if I'm confident enough to say if she could jump to the podium or not.
Well, she was second place last year, so.
I know, but I'm trying also think. I mean, sure, hot take. Third on the,
Spiegel on the podium. I love it.
She jumps to third. Everyone else bumps down.
Bella?
Wow, I have a lot to say on that one. I have Ariel 1, Emma Carey 2, Gabby 3, and my 4, 5, and 6 are fun. I actually don't have Danny until 7th.
Okay.
I don't have Danny until 7. I don't foresee her being on the podium.
Is the reason why people are dismissing her this year is because the field is a little bit stronger compared to last year? Is that what you're based? I mean, like last year, Paige won, and then Danny's finished second, and then Emma Carey finished third. I mean, besides that, name someone else who competed last year in the individual women's field.
Right. I think the women's field is getting stronger and stronger. And I think Danny has been consistent, but I haven't seen anything from her as of late that I would say, oh yeah, she's fitter than the people that I have 2nd through 6th, which is why I have her in 7th.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Danny Spiegel is, as long as we're talking about her, and then we'll get Patrick's podium, is that she made a decision to go to Saudi Arabia to do something that she believed in and was a good opportunity to her the week before semifinals. It cost her a trip to the CrossFit Games. Barely cost her a trip to the CrossFit Games. She did the road qualifier, made it through, finished in the top 10 there. I think it was the first time she's been in the top 10, improving on her finish from the previous season. And now we see her here in Wodapalooza, where her history of competing at Wodapalooza is pretty good. I think she's got 3 previous individual appearances there at least, and she's been in the top 5 every time. 2019, 2022 she was 5th, and then 2nd before. So she turns heads at Wodapalooza and she does well. Personally, I feel these are I guess I don't know if about Ellie Turner competing or not now that we saw that comment from Sarah, but I felt good about Fee and Ellie for this competition and kind of grouped them with Danny and Emily Rolfe as that next kind of group right there. But I don't think it's out of I think it's reasonable for Chad to say that Danny can finish on the podium. Patrick, what's your podium look like?
I like Gabby. I like Ariel at 2, but I think Danny might sneak it. Emily Rolfe 3rd. I got Emily Rolfe coming in 3rd.
Okay.
Yeah. That's who I got. Just barely. Again, I think Emma's going to do very well. I think I think what's going to hurt Danny might be she's a decent swimmer, but there's a 5K as well, and I think that 5K is going to be a bottom finish for her.
No 5K for the individuals.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry for the team. Yeah, exactly. Sorry for the team but sorry, my apologies. I'm jumping ahead, but
Okay.
no, I think Emily's going to do pretty well. She wasn't just talking to her at Dubai. I know her Dubai finish wasn't what we expected, but she was in a good headspace, and I think she gathered some information. And I don't know. I just feel she's going to podium.
Yeah, Rolf's got 2 appearances here before the last 2 years, 3 appearances, excuse me. And she's been 9th, and 10th. So she's pretty consistently kind of hovering around that 10th. I think she can improve on that a little bit. I don't see her as a podium threat the way that Patrick does. And as far as Turner and Sagafi go, Turner has competed here in the past and done. I think they've both been here once before. Ellie was 6th 2 years ago, and Fee was 8th that same year. I feel that Fee has improved and kind of made the next step in her career, and I think that this is a really good competition for her, and that she's going to be in the top 5 after day 1 and stay there. And I picked her 4th, obviously, so I have kind of a high hopes and expectations for Fee. And Ellie Turner, I had thought that if she was signing up and showing up to compete in this, that would mean that she was healthy. And when she's healthy, she's pretty damn good. Obviously, now we have this speculation that she may be withdrawing, so we'll have to wait and see about that. But assuming that they're competing healthy, this is where I see it. But I'm pretty curious because just outside of there, I have Gracie Walton and Olivia Kerstetter, and Bella has mentioned that her 4.56 is interesting to say the least, and I'm guessing she's got someone up near there, maybe 2, that the rest of us don't have.
I think I knew. Go ahead.
I have Gracie in 4th.
Yes.
And it's one of those things, I've seen her on, the last couple years. I've seen what she can do, and I saw what she did in Down Under, and truly, I'm so freaking stoked to see Gracie against this depth of field, because the way she performed at Down Under was a games level athlete performance. And so now I want to see what she can do against some serious games athletes. And if she can hold her own against the likes of some of these girls here, I think that's pretty freaking exciting for her. So she was my 4th. Emily was in 5th.
It's funny you say that, because I mean, I use that comparison. Everyone knows I'm really high on Gracie as well, but I always use that comparison between her and Ellie. And I know Ellie's not a big fan of that, or Gracie. I mean, which I totally understand, but Ellie kind of like, she was a games athlete, but she kind of like blew onto the scene in her at Wodapalooza in 2022, because I mean, she was in 1st leading up to going to the final day of when it was a 3-day competition. She had, I think, like 2 back-to-back wins on Friday night. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but she looked great. And she had some hiccups there towards the end, especially specifically in the handstand walk event. But I definitely see that type of thing for Gracie. Gracie, kind of her first appearance at Wodapalooza, kind of doing the same thing that Ellie does, where it's kind of showcasing what she's about to do. And we've been kind of talking about her for a while, so it's going to be really cool to see what she does. And based on, I think Brian has her, I think he has her 8th, and I think that's great. But I also think she has the potential to be maybe 5 or 4.
Yeah. I think you're saying great things, Brian, but you're on mute.
You're muted.
I like the pick of Grace Walton here in 8th place. She the 2 worst finishes that I like the pick of her to do better than 8th place by you guys because of her 2 worst finishes. Because of her 2 worst finishes at Down Under, which came on heavy density handstand walking and handstand push-up workout, which we have very little of in this competition. There are 3 separate 90-foot handstand walks in one of the events, but they have 180 feet of lunging, rope climbs, toes to bars. There's some stuff to offset that, and the amount of time on your hands compared to everything else is minimal. And because of, I have Gracie in 3rd in Heat 1 app. Okay, well, we can talk about Heat 1 app for sure in a second. And because of Wodapalooza having some consciousness to not program a super big overlap from the team to individual divisions, because they want to have excuse me, they want to encourage athletes to do both if they're interested in doing both. The handstand push-ups are mostly reserved for the team competition over these course of these 4 days. That seems to me, who hasn't seen her compete live like Bella has, to be the one biggest kind of hole in Gracie's game is getting upside down. There's a small amount of that in the individual field. You just didn't tell me otherwise, Bella?
I want to disagree because at Down Under, she's very talented on her hands. But at Down Under, it was turf handstand walks. It had just rained. It was some serious heavy snatches. There was a lot, and there was slalom. It was not a workout that I would say, if you're not good at handstand walks, this is where we're going to see it. I think she's very talented at gymnastics and walking on her hands. I think that workout specifically, even Annika Greer struggled in that one. And I know she's very talented.
Yeah.
In handstand
What about
walks. And so I think that was not the one.
Gracie has a background in cheerleading and gymnastics before starting.
And this is actually great because I talk about all the time, and sometimes people take exception to this, the difference between going to competitions and watching live in person, having a chance to actually see things that are taking place on the field of play, talk to the athletes, competition directors, understand those variables, and then someone who in this case is me. In many cases, I say that it's John Young, who's only looking at results from afar. And when I see that her two worst performances by far were on a workout with handstand walking and handstand push-ups, I make a correlation there. But in this case, Bella, who has that live experience, is telling me that there were other things going on and that I should think twice before maybe making that conclusion about her. And so I think that's actually a perfect, and that's why I kind of like that back and forth. So thank you, Bella, for that. Grace Walton, she's a person that, again, John Young had on his rookie hill. Many people are high on her this year. She did finish third at Down Under behind Madeline Sturt and Annika Greer. Seems to be a big time up and comer. Not the only one in Australia, as we'll talk about a few others. None of you guys have mentioned Kerstetter yet. I have her here in the top 10. Do you think that that's reasonable or not?
She's in my 9. She's in the same spot for me. So I think
perfect.
So.
Top 10. Yeah.
Bella, you need to start publishing. You need to start publishing your picks too.
Okay, maybe Brian can convince me. I need pretty graphics though, so maybe Chad will make graphics for me.
Yeah.
I'll help you out.
PC, he usually does these.
I just need more pink, if that's okay. I think everything's fine.
We'll get you a colorway.
Pink in there.
Yeah, we'll get the Bella colorway going. That's awesome.
Colorway going.
That's how we know her. That's how we can distinguish. I don't have to put Bella's name on it. We just like pink is Bella and Brian's yellow.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. And then last athlete I have in the top 10, Matilda Garnis. Any thoughts about her? She took a big step backwards at the games this year from the previous year. She competed on a team at Wodapalooza 2 years ago and finished in the top 10. First time as an individual. Is she a top 10 athlete against this field?
I think it's possible. I think if she has been doing the training that I believe she has, knowing what her plan is for this year, I think it's very possible that she's top 10. I actually have her ahead of Danny. And that was I think a bold choice on my end to say that I believe in Matilda. I know, right? That's what I was thinking as well. But I do think she had not the year she wanted to have, and this coming year will look a lot different for her. So I wanted to give her a little bit of the boost going into Wodapalooza Miami.
I actually had her right outside my top 10. I actually had, and we'll talk about the next 10, but I had Sydney Wells actually in the top 10. So maybe we can segue into that. That.
Yeah, let's go to the next 10 that I have there. So 11 through 20 on the screen. We have a bunch of CrossFit Games rookies from this past year kind of stacked up here. Vidison, Wells, Dommett, Stanley, DeRoy, all were rookies at the CrossFit Games in 2023. Freya Moosbrugger has experience there, Victoria Campos, and Elena Caratala. So 8 out of the 10 on this list have competed at the CrossFit Games. They may not have as many appearances as some of the depth of the men's field has, where we've got guys with 4 or 5 appearances like Vigneault who are struggling to even make the top 20. But they're all riding high off of a great CrossFit Games season. Most of them haven't competed at all in this off season, and I would expect are pretty excited about the chance to get invited to the premier fitness festival of the off season for the past 12 years in Wodapalooza. Of those 5 that I have 11 through 15 there, who do you like the best, Bella?
I like Sydney, actually. She was kind of right there with my predictions. I think she's had the last year was, okay, who am I? I'm not just my sister's, doppelganger. I'm my own person. I'm my own athlete. And so I've actually really enjoyed watching Sydney come into her own. And so I'm excited to see how she does. I think with her being 12th, Abby Dommett, I mean, there's nobody that believes in her more than the Golden Line crew. And so I think her year last year, in my mind, I was like, who is this? Who is this? First of all, Golden Line's not one of those training programs that I'm always thinking about. It's not one of those big ones where I think, oh, they're pushing out athletes, they're cranking out athletes. So I think it'll be really interesting. I think when you have Sydney there, Abby there, I've seen Emily recently a lot, and I would say Emily is fitter now.
Tell us about Emily DeRoy, because most people have only seen her compete at the CrossFit Games as far as in-person competition. My understanding is she was coming into the games injured, but she emerged from that group of up-and-comers in Oceania last year to earn that spot. She did compete in Down Under. I think she was 9th, which maybe wasn't great, but I feel like she's on the way back up. What are kind of the trademarks of Emily DeRoy that we can be on the lookout for in Miami?
I would say she's fitter and stronger than she was last time. So I think in the last year, she's worked a lot on strength and a lot on kind of aerobic capacity. And so I would say even in the 6 months that I saw her from Torian to, the games to Down Under, she's transformed as an athlete. And if you're thinking about athletes coming out of Australia, there's several that are actually competing at Wodapalooza, which is really fun. And she's one of those ones that's on the come up alongside with Gracie. And the two of them are going to have to really battle it out in that region for the, foreseeable future. I would say she stacks up against Freya, Caroline, Abby, and Sydney really well. It'll be fun to see if she can actually crack some top 10 finishes. But I think having her in that 15 that's fair. And I think that's pretty spot on to where she'll be.
That Down Under championship was super close and competitive. There were 800 points available, I believe, and from Gracie Walton in 3rd with 564 to Jamie Goodwin, who was 10th, was 508. So less than 60 points separating those 8 spots. So even though that 9th maybe looks bad on paper compared to Walton's 3rd, not that far away in terms of performance across an 8-event competition. And as I mentioned, there's a few international athletes that snuck in there, but there is a good depth to the field in Australia for up-and-comers. Julia Hannaford, who will also be a Wodapalooza, finished 6th in that one. So if you're a fan of Oceania and some of the young athletes arising there, you're going to get to see and meet some of them here in Miami, which I think is great. Chad, we got a Canadian here, Freya Moosbrugger. She's competed at Wodapalooza twice before, 11th 2 years ago, 15th the year before that. She's kind of taken a few steps back this past year, but she's changed her training. You think this is a decent spot for her? Or do you think she maybe has a bounce back at Miami this year?
I think this is a decent spot. I don't know if she beats anyone ahead of her. So I think that's okay that she's there. I know that she's been sort of quiet after she kind of came onto the scene. And I think Rebecca Vidison might, if I think of enemy on this list, I think she could possibly crack the top 10. I mean, I have her.
I have her. I actually it might sound sort of crazy, and I know Patrick, I think, compared like Mertens to Fikowski in terms of mindset, even though their physiques are totally different. But I feel very similar about Vidison, who I have 11th, and Mertens, who I had 11th in this field and competition. I think all of the workouts are great for her, other than the snatch, where she's going to probably take a big hit. I think she should do really, really well on the swimming workout and pretty good on that kind of moderate weight cycling and gymnastic cycling style events that helped her get to the games this past year for the first time. So I'm curious to see, in a similar way to Luke Parker against what I would say is a less deep field, I'm curious to see if she can have another good performance like that. Patrick, you're kind of honestly, I would put you up against most anyone in the world in the terms of the mid-tier North American athletes. What can you tell us about Carolyn Stanley and Allie Weiss and Callista Lang? Any of those three that you want to kind of educate people about and what you expect from them this weekend?
Well, one thing I want to say is you talked about a lot of these women being games rookies. However, a lot of them are not Wodapalooza rookies. They've been this is for Sydney, Caroline, Freya, Allie Weiss, Victoria Campos, Elaine. They've all competed at Wodapalooza as early as I mean, like last year, or they've competed there multiple years. But in terms of Caroline, I think that's why she stacks up. She's very strong. She's an athlete, former collegiate softball player at D1 level. She has a lot of experience. She's coming off a lot of a really good performance at the games, I believe, for a rookie. And then someone like Callista, who I was really impressed with that semifinals. She did really well. Just she's kind of, her and Allie are very similar in terms of body type, very kind of slimmer athletes. They're surprisingly strong for who they are. You're going to be really surprised by what Callista and Allie Weiss put up in terms of their snatch weight. I think Allison Weiss she might have a 200-pound snatch in her.
She's really close if she doesn't already.
Yes. Yes, she's really close. I mean, I know I've seen in the past her do 185, like it was, pretty easy for her. So I know she's pretty close. It'll be interesting. She, she had a hip injury last year. She had a stretch fracture, I think, in her hip during semifinals. So we didn't get to see the best version of Allison Weiss. So she's healthy. She moved to Underdogs. She lives in Vegas. She's, for the first time, has a dedicated coach, and she's got everything dialed in. And you look at this whole field of athletes, she's a only games champion in this whole field of women athletes, winning I believe the inaugural
2000. I think it was 2016,
right?
16, because it was the first year
16.
I ever went to the CrossFit Games as a fan, and she won it.
Yeah, she won, and she's kind of been like trying to decide if she wants to do CrossFit or not, but she's totally dedicated. She's just ultra talented. She is a CrossFitter by nature, but she has so many other, she's very, very high gymnastic skills. I think her best finish of semifinals was actually the legless rope climb, or I think she did pretty well in the Go Ruck muscle up event as well. But she's someone that you have her 18, but I could definitely see her being in the top 15. Same with Callista, and then Caroline Stanley. I think she's someone that we need to watch that might crack into that top 10. And of course, obviously, I think Sydney Wells, Bella brought up a lot of great points, her kind of getting out of the shadow of her sister. She's reinvented herself. She's probably one of the most athletic people in this field, and endless potential. And she has a dedicated coach and Coach Upshaw from Proven that's dedicating so much time to her to work on her weaknesses. So yeah, this is a very
it's a strong 10. It's a strong 10, a lot of different potential and opportunity here. I would say that Callista Lang is probably the least recognizable name on this list, but she's actually missed the games by one spot twice in her career. She was 6th on a team one year. She was 6th at the Granite Games, finishing just behind Carlo Privo 2 seasons ago. And quite frankly, absent of a near last place finish on Dumbbell Linda at semifinals, I think she might have made the games last year. She was so good at everything else, and she took a 58th on that. So there's I didn't go back to watch. She did struggle a little bit with the sled pull as well, so that top end strength might not be there, or that upper body pressing, and that sled was kind of a wild card. So I don't really worry too much about it. But if you're getting last place, you probably got stuck on the dumbbell bench. There's no dumbbell pressing here. There's actually no upper body pressing other than the shoulder to overhead and the handstand walking. So Callista Lang could be a sneaky pick for maybe a lesser known name in the field to keep your eye on this weekend.
Yeah, compare Callista's finishes in those events to what Allison did in the West, and you'll see very similar trends. Like I said, they're very similar athletes. Callista's a little bit younger. I believe Callista's only 20, maybe 19, 20. Allison she's
22 now.
22. Okay. Believe Allison just turned 25. So, but yeah, these are some of the future athletes, and they're a lot of upside. But yeah, it'd be interesting to compare those two results at the semifinals to kind of see where the strength and weaknesses are. I will give Allison the edge when it comes to top end strength, especially when it comes to the snatch and some of the other events.
So pretty good look at the 11 through 20 there. Campos and Caratala are arguably the fittest women in Brazil and in Spain, respectively. Both have had some up and down performances over their careers. Both have made the CrossFit Games before. And I'm always excited to see what they can do against this caliber of field. I think that they both could do a little bit better than this. But if they're not careful, they can fall outside the top 22, because as we shift to 21 through 30, there's still some competitive names in this field. Kelly Baker will be competing on a team, not in the individual field. So if she was listed as individual, then I guess, yes, she's withdrawn, but she will be in the team competition with Kelsey Kiel and Emily Lundberg, who we'll talk about tomorrow. So let's take a look at the next 10. 21 through 30 for the women this weekend, and kind of a all over the place sort of a list of women here. You have some veterans, you have some younger athletes, you have some team athletes, you have some international athletes. Bella, when you look at this list, what jumps off the page to you?
Probably the person I
Chaotic.
highlighted.
Honestly, no. Honestly, it's kind of chaotic. I think there's a lot of team athletes here that are going to be fun to see compete as individuals. To be completely honest, I'm actually excited to see Rebecca Fuselier compete again, because we didn't see her last year, and I think she's on this journey to prove that it wasn't a fluke that she made it in the first place. And so I'm excited to see her, developed a little bit, see if she can actually hold her own against I would say it's a moderately strong women's field. I would say Rose Scott, she's 28th. She's very, very strong. So if she takes the snatch event, I will not be surprised. If you go on her Instagram, you will just spend hours looking at her doing lifting complexes. She competes with Grid League, and she's so impressive when it comes to using a barbell. Like, if there's anyone on this field, she's so good.
Just like the men's field, there are some big time snatchers in the field, Rowe being one of them. Obviously, Danny Spiegel. Aaliyah Miller has a 220-pound snatch, I believe, for 215. So we're going to see some good stuff on the snatching right out the gate for sure.
Yeah. And then there's obviously my Aussies, Christy and Brianni, both teen athletes. Brianni's young, and so she's on the come up. She competed on a team at Down Under. I believe she was Next Atletica Gold. They didn't end up winning, but they did put on a very solid performance against Emily Rethwell's team. And Christy is on the Torian Mayhem team. So there's phenomenal team females here. We'll see how they stack up against people who are a little bit more comfortable competing individually, because we all know, and they've actually been very vocal about the differences mentally and physically between the two. So I'm as excited as I am to see Emily compete. I think there's a couple other athletes that I'm eager to see more.
Chad has told us privately he loves all these women and is excited to see what they can teach him about their capacities this weekend. But this is the case. Like, even for people who follow the sport closely, there's a lot of names out there, and there are a lot of people that are extremely talented. We're really privileged to have, Bella, who's traveled to so many competitions and can give some insight on some of those things, because it can be hard to keep track of all of them. Patrick, other than the athletes she mentioned, anyone else in this 10 that jumps out to you? I think you're muted, my friend.
Or his mic turned off.
No, it's on, right?
Yeah, you're good.
I really want to see how Elia does in this field. This is big for her, because she is a semifinal athlete, but last year she competed in the RX division at Wodapalooza, finished sixth, I believe. Did really good in the lifting event. She's very strong. She might be one of those athletes after day one or after that first event could be top 10, because she does have, I think, a 200 plus snatch in her. I'm excited for her. Also, she's a friend of our show too, so it's always good. So it'll be interested. I do foresee her probably rocking a B.Friendly exclusive Miami Wodapalooza shirt, which will be on sale at Sherpa Works tent, right, Chad?
That's right.
Okay. But anyways, I'm really interested to see how Elia does. Elizabeth the Wizard, she's someone that she's like, I call it the regional scene. We have these athletes that kind of, Europe has like the European League of off-season competitions, and then we have kind of the same thing here in the U.S. Elizabeth is one of those athletes that does very well in some of those local regional competitions. So this is also a step up in competition for her. So I'm really excited to see her. And then, Jessica Andronzik. She is someone who was on the cusp, very close to making a last chance qualifier at the West Coast Classic in Vegas 3 years ago. She was in the final heat going into the final event. Very short, very strong, very explosive athlete. She's had last couple seasons been marred by injuries. Made the move to Brute last year. Lived in a trailer, or actually a camper, in a campground there in Naples, probably not too far from where Brian's at right now. And she made the semifinals, did pretty well. It was funny because they always talked about like Brute, was 5 for 5, but they failed to mention like how Jessica did. And I thought she did really well in the semifinals coming back from that injury. And she made the move to Mayhem, packed up the camper and moved to Mayhem up to Cookeville. And her coach is Dom. And she's someone who obviously Bella's a big fan, but she's someone who, who was very close on the cusp and suffered some injuries. Now she has a full season of being healthy. I'm really interested to see what she does. If there's a handstand pushing contest, if handstands were included, she'd probably win it. So, but we don't.
Yeah, and then that kind of just leaves in this realm Stacy Liram and Ashley Shoemaker. Yeah, we're gonna mention Nina.
Yeah,
Bragovic.
we'll talk
Also
about
true.
it, Carl. Yep.
Love
Stacey
Nina.
Liram and Ashley Shoemaker, I believe, is going to actually be reverting back to her maiden name of Cope,
Mhm.
but still is listed on leaderboards as Shoemaker. Both have some good success at the semifinal level. Previously, Liram's been in the top 20 for 3 straight years at the semifinal, including 17th last season. She's kind of similarly reminds me to Evan Rogers and Will Bennett. She's approaching 30. She's got a ton of experience. She's on the cusp of making that jump, as many of these women in the previous 10 did this past season. So we'll be watching her closely. And then Ashley Cope, same thing. She's bounced back and forth, sometimes done team, sometimes done individual, but certainly can hold her own against a field like this. We can mention Nina Vragovic. Certainly, she's another athlete that trains at Mayhem. I didn't have her on this roster. She is competing and she is registered to compete in the field at Wodapalooza. I would probably have her in this grouping of 10. We're pretty similar, somewhere in here. Do you guys have any comments about Nina?
I would. I mean, Bella, you've seen her in action. We've seen her action. She was she won the Monster Comp games, which was right before the games. Very talented athlete. And her being at Mayhem and training there, that was a big keep for Dom, for her to go to Cookeville. She's bite into it. She's down there. I'm hearing great things from her out of that camp. But I would probably have her
Patrick, we have probably an international audience. She's bought into it. Is the correct way to say that?
Bought. What did I say? Buy.
She's really bite into it, but that's okay.
Bite into it. You should bite into it. Hey, come on, leave me alone. But I would probably have her in the probably in the top 25. I mean, as but just what I've seen on paper. But she could be up there with someone. I mean, she's beaten, I believe, Elia in some competitions, some of those regional competitions. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah,
I think she's a stud.
Yep.
I think for sure it's possible she cracks top 20. I think, again, at Wodapalooza, we see a lot of these younger athletes really show up and show out. And it's really fun to watch them do that because there's a lot of eyes on Wodapalooza, not necessarily just on the floor, but brands are watching. It's a great opportunity for athletes to really put themselves out there. So I'm excited for her. Everything she's been posting seems like she's super stoked to go and to compete, and she seems ready. So I think, all big things out of those two Mayhem girls, Jess and Nina.
I actually would like to see her. I mean, we know she's in this field, and I think that's great. The experience is going to be good, but I would have really actually like to see her in the RX division and see how she does in the RX division. Because obviously, Brian, you know this better than anyone. That RX division is a really good precursor, and it tells a lot. If you can win that RX division, especially on the women's side at Wodapalooza, it means good things for you.
Yeah, I mean, you asked if there's anyone else that I can remember who competed in the women's field at Wodapalooza last year. Sydney McAlishan was 4th place in the elite division. The year before that, she won the RX division, went on to make the games, or maybe it was 2 years before that. But either way, it is oftentimes a proving ground for athletes to then ascend the ranks. There was a few not too long ago that Nick Matthew was competing in the RX division at Wodapalooza. Guy Mayeros was a champion there. If you qualify for Wodapalooza RX division, you're a savage. You should take the opportunity to go compete there. There's no shame in that. It's incredibly stout competition, and as Patrick said, many times is a paving ground that leads the way to success in other realms in terms of this sport. So let's move on to the last 10 in terms of the women there. Maybe we may have only 8 or 9 on this list. I'm not sure how many I had when I wrote it. Oh, we do have all the way down to 40. So I must have someone in here that's not competing if I don't have Nina on the list.
Nina, yep.
Anyway, yeah, so, you know, some athletes who got some backfills in the qualifiers, but have some good experience for sure. Gabrielle Spence out of Canada has done quite 20 something, I think, at semifinals last year, 2 straight years at semifinals. And then I have her 40th on this list. Bergros Bjorn's daughter, third place at the CrossFit Games in the teenage division. She's only 16 years old. She was super pumped when she got the backflip in fight, 23rd in the qualifier. Her first time competing on the stage against elite athletes coming from Iceland, obviously. And, you know, it's, I don't think anyone at this point can say that 16 or 17 is too young to have, you know, the opportunity to compete in the elite division on the women's side with the success that we've seen from a handful of athletes already over the past couple seasons. Anyone else on here, Bella, for you? I know Julia's on this list. You probably think I have her way too low, don't you?
I don't know if I would say she's too low. I think she's a phenomenal strength athlete, and so I think she'll earn a lot of points in the lift event. You'll see her wearing a cowboy hat most likely and strike movement shoes or some sort of barefoot shoe. That's her jam. Usually one's different than the other. She's quirky like that in a great way. I've seen Margot Massette compete a few times. I've seen Lexi Neely. I think this is fair rankings based on the rest of the 30 women that we've already talked about. I think for any of these ladies to break out of the bottom 10 is going to be a challenge, and someone from the top 20, top 30 is going to have to really struggle for them to get in there. Not saying it's not possible, but I do think despite it not being as sparkly and as exciting as the men's field, I do think it's going to be a very tight and close competition with the ladies.
Yeah, I actually think just kind of looking side by side with the bottom 10 and the bottom women, that there is some opportunity for some of these women to have some success. Lexi Neely did have a good semifinal last year. She's been an up and down athlete for me over her career, sometimes doing great online and not as good in person. Sometimes has had some good success in person. So for me, she's kind of like, I never know what I'm going to get. She's the one on this list that I would say does have the chance to maybe finish as high as 20th if she has a great weekend, but she could certainly be down here in the bottom 10 otherwise. So, you know, excited to see what she brings this time around. Patrick, anyone jumping out for you?
Actually, I was checking to see which name is not competing, and I believe it might be. Hold on a second. Let me pull it up. So, are we seeing this?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay.
What's that? Neely, Napoli, Canning, Hannaford.
I believe it
might
might
be almost impossible. Who do you
I
got?
believe it might be maybe either Kira or Lexi Neely, maybe. Did we see
they're both right there.
They're both there.
Lexi's on there.
Okay.
Weird. Can we download that and then
maybe Andra? Maybe Andra? 1 second. It might be Andra.
Well, and it could be someone from higher up the list also.
Andra's right there.
Yeah, Andra is there. So interesting. Oh, we'll have to resource that.
Maybe Ellie did back out and we just don't know about it yet, and Nina's taking a backflow. We don't know.
Let's see if Ellie's still on here. Ellie's still on the list.
There.
So
well, like we said at the top of the show, or at least talking about the women, the fields are not solidified and perfectly set yet, but we have a pretty good idea of what's going on and who's going to be there for the most part.
Yeah, but in terms of what you asked me, in terms of Lexi Neely is a name that kind of pops out. Had a pleasure of seeing her at a couple competitions. She's a former teen athlete. She has a lot of Wodapalooza experience, especially in the teen division. Her and then Kira Napoli's kind of the same thing, and then of course Gabrielle Spence. Have we talked about her in terms of like how she's made it to the games on a team. I believe she's on that team, I Love It team, with out west from Washington, and she's competed as an individual, I believe, since 2022. Did really well in the Granite Games. Really good runner. is probably an endurance athlete. Could probably be called an endurance athlete. So usually endurance athletes usually translates to decent swimmers. So she might be someone that
I think
could
she
surprise.
trains at I Love It. I don't know if she was on their team or not. I don't see that.
Oh,
But
you're right.
as
She
that
does
said,
train. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah,
and
she trains out of there.
19th at the MAC 2 years ago, 28th at North America West last year. So she's kind of just, to me, she's like in that group that's a little bit behind the women that we just talked about, but
Yeah.
that's the type of athlete that you never know. And sometimes off-season competitions, as we talked about, like Nina Vragovic, for example, she was 51st at a semifinal, wins the Monster Games, and beating several athletes that did much better at semifinals. So it's never a perfect correlate. There are different things that are tested. People can be at different phases in their training, different kind of preparation, injuries that maybe they don't advertise that we don't know about. So certainly a lot of experience on this list. There's hardly anyone here who hasn't competed at least once or twice that we know of this off season already, and also most of them were at the semifinal last year. So pretty, even though it maybe doesn't have the like 4 of the top 6 in the world competing like we have on the men's side, there, this list is chock full of experience and athletes who are looking to break through, and therefore I think can make for a really exciting competition, and likely where you're going to get some pretty good performances coming out of it's. I think a lot of the events are going to have just 2 heats, so you might have some pretty good performances with 20 athletes getting an opportunity to show their stuff at the heat 1 every time the elite divisions take the floor.
I agree.
Love it.
Chad,
All right.
what do you say?
Love it.
But but Gabrielle Spence is Canadian, so Chad, that's someone to keep an eye
I
on.
will make sure I do some research as the Canadian.
Canadian
As the Canadian correspondent.
Canadian.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. So hour 45 minutes focusing on the elite men and women of TYR Wodapalooza 2024. Again, just want to say thank you to Chad, Bella, and Patrick for taking the time. Chad and Bella and I will be back tomorrow evening for the team competition. Elite men and women will break into that. You can be looking for articles and predictions earlier in the day. Please drop comments, questions, criticisms. We don't mind. And of course, if there are people that you think are competing or not competing that are on our list, we're not saying that we have the most perfect information. We try to do the best we can. And lastly, of course, want to thank both Strike Movement and HGR for the support. Look for the Strike Movement to be carrying our coverage throughout this week, and HGR as we head into the rest of 2024. Patrick, anything from you before we close us out?
Yeah, so I mentioned it before. We will have some merch. We'll actually have some merch on sale on site at the Sherpa Works tent. Swing on by if you haven't been able to get any of our older drops, whether it be our games or our B.Friendly World Tour merch. It'll be available, and we'll also have special edition Wodapalooza t-shirts designed by our man. Well, Chad will be there, so swing by, say hi to Chad. He should be there some of the time.
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, there it is.
Yeah.
Bella, you're going to be on the
Got
floor.
some patches too.
Yeah, patches.
Yes.
Oh, the patches.
Everyone's been asking for patches.
Patches. Stickers. Will we have stickers?
No, maybe no stickers.
No, stickers.
Patches.
Okay. Yeah. Bella, you'll be we'll be hearing your voice throughout the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Brian will also be hearing his voice, but on the broadcast. So Brian will be on various times, whether it be either sideline reporting or play-by-play or color. Just he'll be busy, and and we're hoping every evening we'll have a Bella and Brian will get together and recap the show. So make sure you tune in to sign and watch us and follow us on our Instagram and YouTube channels. So and then I shall be just walking around, just being a bum. Just that dude. So
business as usual.
I'll be clean shaven though. So, but yeah, again, shout out to HGR Strike Movement. Keep an eye out. Like I said, this is it. I mean, Strike Movement doesn't do codes. When we met with them, they're like, yeah, we want to do codes. Like me and Chad's draws. What? So there'll be unique codes too. So it won't just be one code that you can use. It'll only be available during Wodapalooza, the week of Wodapalooza. So there'll probably be a different code each day. So you need to just watch our stories, watch our our channels, yeah, we'll have all types of announcements. Watch Brian's personal because he'll be probably doing some stuff on them as well. So with that being said, anyone else got anything to close us out? Bella?
Actually,
anything?
just did want to since T-Bird mentioned it earlier in the show, Tyler Watkins Heat Fantasy Fitness and Heat One app is available. Partnering with Pliability and TYR Wodapalooza, you should be getting some notifications on pretty much every platform about the opportunity to do that. It's free to play. Download the Heat One app, make your picks for top 10. That's super easy. You set a roster and just let it ride for the weekend. There are prizes for the top 10. The grand prize is pretty good. And then if you are a little bit more in depth and want to do the shot caller, you can pick winners for each individual event. And you got to, maybe a little bit more. Well, the events are out actually, so you could even set your picks for that and just enjoy the competition and see where the chips fall come the end of the weekend. I think you can do teams at least for the top 10 as well. So if you haven't played before, check it out. Like I said, it costs nothing to do. You can probably get it done in a couple minutes and then have a little bit more rooting interest each event and beyond there. T. Kane, will there be cuts? I really doubt it. There's only 5 events in 2 days. I think that would be very, very unlikely.
Oh, Heat One app, $14,000 worth of prizes. That's awesome. Great job by Tyler and his team. I know he's gathering a team over there and really pushing it. So $14,000 worth of prizes, and they're all good prizes. So if you make it down to Miami, there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. We're hoping maybe Saturday going live with the show. If not, maybe pre-recording a show. We'll figure it out. As you said, it's Miami. It could rain on a dime. We've all been there in Miami when, so, and that's something to keep in mind too when it comes to events. We've seen events change at Miami due to rain. So just, keep that in mind also when making your choices. So, go ahead and make those choices ahead of time. But, weather does dictate some things in Miami, and who knows, hopefully there's no shark in the water in the bay. And with that being said, I want to end it on a positive note. With that being said, did you see Tiger Woods is no longer Nike?
What?
Yeah.
It's been rumored for a while now. It's official.
Yeah, it's official. Tiger Woods has left Nike.
Did you see that Eagle McMahon left Discmania?
What?
Did you guys see that the Dallas Cowboys won the NFC East?
Chad, what do you got for us?
Yeah, what do you got, Chad? What do you got? Everyone thinks this is CrossFit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Nico's very. How many text messages did you send to Nico?
He got a story post, and then I sent a series of dancing gifts to my friends in Philly.
Yeah.
And they're not so happy with me, but I said it's not them. It's like their team. I like them. It's just, we're still fine. Everything's fine. Again, I think if Eagles fans and Cowboys fans can be friends, we can achieve world peace. And that's what a wonderful note for, the end of the podcast, right?
Yeah, I'd love to see you wearing Dallas gear around Kelsey Keel this weekend.
Oh yeah, dang, true. She's probably be upset, but I got a jersey if she wants to wear it. She totally can. Good one.
But yeah. So just wanted to throw that in there. It popped up. I was like, what? Tiger Woods, 27 years with Nike. Oh, damn. Yeah. So it's crazy. But and then of course it's Monday after NFL's regular season's over, so people are getting fired. So I'm updating my resume right now. So you just don't know. Don't know. Future Atlanta Falcons coach here.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Thanks everyone. Thank you everyone that joined us. It was great. I mean, we had over 100 live views while we're on. So we appreciate it. So I guess everyone really wanted to hear what Chad had to say. So we appreciate that. And as always, be friendly, our friends.